Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Sabah's Ramadan transmission. I hope all of you are well, healthy, safe, and are enjoying Sabah's live transmission. Before we invite our speaker for tonight, I'd like to make some announcements. Our regular kids program starts at 5:30 every day. So from 5:30 to 6, we have the kids Ramadan program. There's a request from parents to send their kids videos or pictures of their Ramadan projects to info@kisakids.org. Info@kisakids.org. Following the kids program, we have a full hour of Quran recitation from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. This is a collaborative program between all Bay Area centers. So we have multiple reciters, 1 hour of recitation of the Holy Quran. So if you can, please join this program as well. From 7 to 7:30, we have daily dua iftata, and from 7:30 to Maghrib time, there's an English speech. Tonight's speaker is Maulana Syed Ali Moosavi, and from Tuesday through Saturday, we have special programs in the evening after Maghrib, after Iftar, which is at 9:15. So from Tuesday through Saturday, special programs from 9:15. And those are very good programs. I attended I watched a couple myself. The game night was excellent. My kids loved it. And the round table with Maulanas, that was excellent too. Very informative. So, of course, I want to thank OMC for putting such good content out. We truly appreciate it. So, lots of duas for the OMC and all the folks who are behind the scenes. There's a Sabah food drive. I'm sure you must have heard about it. Every Sunday and Monday between 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. You can pick up grocery bags if a family is in need. If you are in a distress situation, please come forward. You can pick up a bag of groceries, which is good for about a family of 4 and will last you 1 week. If you are unable to pick up a bag, you can contact us via Sabah's email or contact any board member or the email address on the flyer, and a arrangement for delivery can be made as well. So please reach out to us if you are in a distress situation and in need of groceries. Finally, before I invite our speaker for tonight, let me give a brief introduction. He is a born and raised Californian, so born and raised in Southern California, attended UC San Diego, majored in Eastern History, and then post his graduation traveled to Qum, where he spent about 8 years focusing on Islamic jurisprudence and history. He's currently active in the Noor Collective Center in San Diego. With that, please recite a loud salawat to invite Maulana Syed Ali Moosavi.
أعوذ بالله من شر الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وأهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد أعوذ بالله من شر الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Inshallah, I wanted to begin tonight's session by mentioning a few words in the honor of Hazrat Khadija, the noble wife of the Holy Prophet. When we look at Lady Khadija, one of the things that we really realize is that she supported the Holy Prophet at a time when nobody else was willing to support him. In our own lives, there's a lot of situations that we've been in, perhaps when we were younger, when perhaps we were about to start a new company, or we were trying to start a graduate program in school, and we didn't really know what to do. We weren't really certain about what direction to take. And at that point in our lives, somebody stepped in and they began to support us. And they began to support us in a situation when nobody else would. And now that we look back, we realize that it was through the support of that individual or individuals that I was able to reach, for example, this position in my life today. When we look at the life of the Holy Prophet, we recognize that Khadija played this kind of a role in regards to the Holy Prophet. One time in a narration, it's been mentioned that Aisha, one of the wives of the Holy Prophet, she felt a sense of jealousy towards Khadija. And as a result of that sense of jealousy, she tells the Holy Prophet that, Ya Rasulullah, she was only an old woman, and Allah has compensated you with someone who is better and someone who is younger. She was, of course, referring to herself. When Rasulullah hears this, he became very upset. And he replies to Aisha, he says, no, indeed. He says that he has not compensated me with someone better than her. For she believed in me when everyone else disbelieved in me. She held me truthful when others called me a liar. She sheltered me when everyone else had abandoned me. She comforted me when others had shunned me. And Allah granted me children through her. Of course, here he's referring to the birth of his beloved daughter Fatima Zahra. And so with these words, we recognize that the role of Khadija, it was one of these pivotal roles that the Holy Prophet, when he's looking back at the support that she had given to him, he's recognizing, he's acknowledging that without her, all of this may not have been possible. It was through her support, it was through her love, it was through her comfort when everyone else had abandoned me that we were able to reach this kind of a position. So in light of this, we just wanted to mention this in honor and acknowledgement of the Lady Khadija, that inshallah, Allah will bless us and allow us to have a true recognition of this noble woman. Inshallah. Now, in light of the generosity of the Lady Khadija, that she had given all of her wealth to the Holy Prophet, inshallah, I wanted to speak a little bit tonight about the topic of generosity. One of the most important characteristics, my brothers and sisters, that a Muslim can have is the characteristic of generosity. If we look at all of the characteristics that we can be blessed with as a Muslim, generosity is really one of those top characteristics. And what is interesting about this concept of generosity is that it's very easy for us to conceptualize that if you go throughout the entire world, beyond the borders of religion and race and nationality, it's very clear that all human beings, regardless of any of their affiliations, they recognize that generosity is a beautiful virtue. Generosity is a beautiful characteristic for a human being to have. You're never going to find anyone who's going to say, no, it's actually something positive to be a miser. It's something positive to actually have the opposite value than generosity. So if this is the case, then we have to begin by asking ourselves, we have to say that why is it that when we look around our society, we look around at the people that are in our society, Why is it that some people are very generous to the point that they're willing to give you the shirts off of their backs, while others are so miserly that they're not even willing to give you a single quarter, not even if they find it on the ground of a store? They're going to hold that fist tight and they're not going to release that, even that quarter that they found on the ground. What is it that makes some people exceedingly generous and other people exceedingly miserly? Now, some people are going to say, well, what it is that some people are just born generous. When we look at people, right, and it does appear to run in families that some people are just born generous, that the individual, he just woke up one day and he was generous, and the other individual, he was miserly. Now, there is a role that genetics does play in the qualities that we have. There's no doubt about this. Because when we look at, for example, the example of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, we see that when he was looking for a wife, this is 10 years after Fatima al-Zahra has passed away, he's looking for a wife. He goes to his brother Aqil. He says, Ya Aqil, I am looking for a wife who everyone in her lineage is someone of courage and bravery. I want someone whose entire lineage is full of people who are renowned for their courage, are renowned for their bravery. Aqil, he says, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, inshallah, I'll find you somebody. He goes, and after searching for a period of time, he says that, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I have found you a woman by the name of Fatima Kalabiyya. Later on, Fatima Kalabiyya, she becomes known as Ummul Baneen, the mother of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. And so we see that there is a reality that when we practice a virtue, whether it's physical or whether it's spiritual, that virtue can be passed on to some degree to the next generations. And if every generation continues to do this, it definitely gives a very high potential. It gives the potential of the bravery, for example, of Abu al-Fadl Abbas on the battlefield of Karbala. But here, we're just speaking about this as the very pinnacle. Because when we look at ourselves, we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's true that there is this potential of this genetic level of having these very high virtues. But at the same time, it is clear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given everyone a very high state of spiritual virtues. We all have an immense amount of potential within us. So then the question is that where does this generosity come from? Because you can have that several generations of generous individuals and you can be a miser. So where does this come from? That someone is generous and someone is miserly. My brothers and sisters, when we look at generosity, we find that generosity is something which is directly connected to our worldview. Generosity is a state that we develop within ourselves, which is directly connected with that worldview, the way that we see the world around us. What does this mean? Some people, when they look out at the world, what they see is they see a world where wealth is something which is to be used. They see that wealth is something to be given to others. Wealth is something which has no value in and of itself. Other people, when they look at wealth, they see it as the very source of their happiness and safety in this world. That when they look at wealth, they see that in the accumulation of wealth, in the collection of wealth, that is where the end goal lies. So it's very clear that if you have the first viewpoint, that wealth is something that is to be used, that it creates happiness through its use, then of course you're going to be able to spend it on others. Whereas if you have the second view, that wealth is the end goal that I need to achieve, then it's very clear that happiness is going to be found in accumulating and holding on to that wealth. Now the question that comes up is, what is the greatest thing that actually influences this worldview? What is the biggest thing that influences how we see the world around us? When we look at the biggest influencer, the biggest thing which helps us to view the world through that lens, we find that it is the aspect of religion which is the greatest influencer. If we look at ourselves, that we see that religion is the thing which teaches us that, look, this dunya that you are living in, it is a temporary dunya. You're not going to be in this world forever. And as such, if you want to achieve success, it is through expending what you have accumulated in this dunya. There was this beautiful tradition that I was reading a few nights ago where a man approaches Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. He comes to Ali and he's complaining about his financial situation. He's saying, Ya Mawla, I'm having a difficult time making money. Now, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he looks at this individual and he realizes that this individual is overstressing. He's financially okay. He's overstressing. He's overthinking things. He's worried too much about accumulation. And so the Imam, he tells him something really beautiful. He says that know that whatever reaches you in this world beyond your needs is something that you are only saving for other people. What is Amir al-Mu'mineen doing here? He doesn't really console him. He doesn't tell the man that, for example, you are going to be okay, you're going to make more money. He doesn't give him a magical dua. He says, recite this dua and you will become a very wealthy individual. You'll never have to worry about money ever again. The Imam, he says, no. He says, understand one point. That whatever you are making which is beyond your needs in this dunya is something which you're only saving for others. It's not going to benefit you in the least. What a beautiful thing that the Imam is doing. The Imam is literally restructuring the man's worldview. He's restructuring the way that the man is looking at the world. And through that restructuring, he is fixing this anxiety that the man has in his heart. You know what the main issue, my brothers and sisters, is with us? Religion, it tells us that we are going to be here for a very short period of time. We ourselves, we see that people die. We in fact go to their funerals. We recite the Fatiha over their bodies. We go with them as they are being taken into the graveyard. We might even help to pour that dirt onto their gravesite. But in spite of this, my brothers and sisters, deep down inside, we have this idea, for whatever reason, that I am going to live forever. It's a strange thing, isn't it? That I see people dying. I theoretically understand that I'm going to die one day. I know I'm going to die. But deep down within my heart, I have this hope that I'm going to live forever, that death is for somebody else. If we understand that we are truly going to die, that we are truly going to leave this world, then we would never have this issue of being miserly, and we would be the most generous of the people. Now, some people are going to say, let's hang on here. You're saying that religion is something which gives you this worldview which promotes generosity, yes? But we have seen that people who are non-religious are still generous. That in some cases we've seen that an individual who is an atheist, he's a generous person. He gives money to charities and whatnot. So how does this work? How do we justify this? The answer here, my brothers and sisters, is that it is true that you find from time to time that a person who does not have a religious worldview is extremely generous. This exists. But if you look at the data which exists, and they've done studies on this, and they've taken different religious groups, and they've actually tried to see who is the most generous, they found that religiosity is one of the greatest indicators of generosity. That those who have religious beliefs, they were the highest in the index of giving, in the index of being generous. Whereas those who are atheists, even though there may be outliers, for the most part, as a group, they were the lowest in terms of giving. And this makes perfect sense if we really consider this, that if an individual is looking at this world and he's saying to himself, well, I'm only going to be here for a temporary period of time, and eventually I'm going to die and I'm going to leave this world, and that's going to be it. There's not going to be anything beyond this. Then, of course, an individual like this is going to try to spend on himself. He's going to try to get every last drop of pleasure that he can in this dunya before he's snuffed out. So here we see that religion, it truly is one of the most powerful things which gives us this motivation to be generous. Now, what is ajib though, is that when we look at the Quran, Allah, it's very clear, Allah, He recognizes that in spite of the fact that we recognize generosity as something good, He still understands that it's difficult for us to give. Because our iman, for example, may not be perfect. That we may have hope of that perhaps we're going to be in this world forever. So Allah understands that at a core level, we have this issue with giving, that perhaps deep down, we have a little bit of greed, that we want the best for ourselves and perhaps others come next. And He recognizes this and He says that there's no issue with this, that Allah has in fact created us in a way where we do want what is best for ourselves. There's no issue with wanting what is best for ourselves. In fact, Allah has created us with this, in this way, because as a result of being created in this way, we actually will seek the best. We'll elevate ourselves spiritually. And so Allah, He understands that we have this desire that we want ourselves to be on top. We want the best for ourselves. And so He gives us a guarantee. In the Holy Quran, in Surah Baqarah, it says the parable of those who spend their wealth in the way of Allah is that of a grain which grows 7 ears. In every ear, 100 grains, and Allah enhances several fold whomever He wishes. In this verse, Allah is trying to channel that desire that we have for ourselves, that we want the best for ourselves. He says that if you want the best for yourselves, then I'm going to give you a way to achieve the best for yourselves. Give charity for my sake. And what is going to happen is that just like you plant that one grain into the earth, Allah says that you will see that that grain suddenly comes and it has 700-fold what you had planted in it initially. In verses like these, Allah is trying to explain that you want what is best for yourself. There's no question about this. There's no problem with this. So give charity sincerely for my sake, and you will see the reward of that charity. This is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages us. But what is amazing, my brothers and sisters, is that while Allah is encouraging us, and He encourages us through the medium of the angels, that whenever you want to give charity, it is mentioned that the angels, they are giving you this good news. At the same time that Allah is giving that through the angels, something else is happening. Someone else is whispering into your ear. Who is it? It's Shaitan. That at that time that you are about to give that charity, Shaitan comes. In the Holy Quran it mentions, "Ash-shaytanu ya'idukumul faqr wa ya'murukum bil fahsha." That Shaitan, he frightens you of poverty and he commands you to commit indecent acts. So there's this beautiful image that is coming to mind, that on one hand Allah has sent these angels who are whispering these promises, that they are trying to encourage us to give charity, that they are trying to encourage us to be generous. At the same time, Shaitan is also there, and he's also trying to influence us the opposite direction. In a tradition, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, he explains this verse. He explains this verse, and the explanation is a beautiful explanation. He says that at the time of giving, just imagine that you are about to put your hand in your pocket and you are about to take out something, you are about to be generous towards someone who is in need. Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, he says that at the time of giving, there are 2 things which we receive from God and 2 things that we receive from Shaitan. As for the 2 things that you receive from God, there is the forgiveness of your sins and an increase of your wealth. As soon as you give, you're about to give, Allah, He gives you the promise that as soon as you give, I am going to forgive you your sins and I'm actually going to increase you your wealth. And then right at that moment, Shaitan, he has the 2 promises that he's going to give. What does Shaitan say? Shaitan, he comes and he gives you those 2 promises. The first is the promise of poverty. He begins to whisper into your ear. He says that if you give this amount of money, you might become poor. Just imagine that you might lose your job tomorrow. What are you going to do if you give this amount of money? What if a situation happens where an accident happens to you and you are not able to provide for your family? And then the second thing what Shaitan does, he tries to push you through fahsha, through corrupt actions. And at first, when we think about it, what do these 2 things have to do with one another? That a person wants to give charity to someone and Shaitan is coming and he's saying don't give it, and then he's promoting fahsha. What could it possibly mean? The answer here is that he's trying to tell you that there are all sorts of haram things that you could be performing with this money. Right now is the era of the coronavirus. Even in the era of coronavirus, he's going to show you that there is a ton of things that you could be doing which are haram with this amount of money. So my brothers and sisters, at the time when you are trying to be generous, at the time that you want to give to the masjid, when you want to give to a homeless person, when you want to give to an orphan, when you want to give to someone who has lost their job, at that moment, Allah on one hand is giving you these promises of forgiveness and this promise that your wealth is actually going to increase, while shaitan is going to give you the promise of poverty and the promise that you should go towards the fahsha. The question that comes to mind is, at that moment, how are you going to behave? How are you going to react? And one of the things that inshallah we can keep in mind is that at that moment, as you want to give charity, remember that the best way to slap shaitan in the face is to actually give twice as much as you were going to give. You're about to give to that orphanage, that thought comes into your mind, shaitan is entered, he's warning you, don't do this, slap him in his face. Give twice as much, give 3 times as much as you were going to give. This is what breaks the back of the shaitan in moments like this. Now, we as followers of the Ahlul Bayt, we have some of the best examples, my brothers and sisters, when it comes to generosity. A lot of times when we hear these speeches, they're just words, right? They're just ideas which remain in our heads. And what is needed is for us to see a real human being who is actually like this, who is actually this beacon of generosity. And when we look at the Ahlul Bayt, my brothers and sisters, we see example after example of generosity that really, when you read these stories, it breaks your heart. That what the Ahlul Bayt were willing to do for the sake of others, for the sake of Allah. So let's kind of go through these examples that we have from the Ahlul Bayt. When we look at the life of Rasulullah, we see that in one tradition, Rasulullah, it is said that he used to prefer the poor to himself. Whenever a poor person would come to him, he would take the food that he was going to eat and he would give it to that poor person. You have to realize that Rasulullah, it wasn't that he had a lot of food, it wasn't that he had a surplus of food. He was literally at that moment of hunger. And right now we're at a moment of hunger, aren't we? That we're feeling that pang of hunger from fasting the entire day. Rasulullah would take that food that was right in front of him after a long day, and he would go and he would prefer the poor to himself. And the hadith it mentions that he used to give them so much food while he suffered the hunger, that he would even tie the stone of hunger to himself. Now you guys might be wondering, what in the world is this stone of hunger? At that time period, the Muslims would suffer from such extremes of hunger that they would have this excruciating pain in their stomach. And when this pain in their stomach had reached the point that they couldn't bear it anymore, what they would do is they would take a stone, they would wrap a cloth around that stone, and then they would tie that stone around their stomach so that through the pressure of that stone, they wouldn't feel that excruciating pain that they were feeling at that moment. Just imagine that Rasulullah, he's been fasting at a day like this. A poor person comes to his house, he gives him all of his food, to the point that the hunger is so much that it's excruciating. He can't bear it. He's actually placing a stone on his stomach so that he doesn't feel that pain of hunger anymore. This is the example of our Holy Prophet. When we look at the generosity of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, we see another story of an individual that would always prefer others over himself. In one story, his servant Mu'alla, he says that one day I see my master, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, he's going towards the Bani Sa'ada neighborhood. And so I begin to follow my master, and as I was following my master, I see that he is carrying something very heavy on his back. As I'm following him, something falls out of this sack that he is carrying on his back. I bend down to pick up what it is. I realize that he's carrying a sack filled with loaves. I take this loaf of bread, I give it to my master. We begin to walk towards the Bani Sa'ada neighborhood together. He says, when we reached the Bani Sa'ada neighborhood, I realized that there were a number of people who were sleeping in the streets. I saw my master, he went towards these individuals and he began to place loaves of bread by their heads. I asked him, I said, Ya Mawla, are these from your followers? Are these from your Shias that you're going to this extent to leave them food at the middle of the night? The Imam replies that if they had been our Shias, we would have given them even more. It's very possible that these could have been the enemies of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. It could have been that they could have been from the Nawasib. The Imam doesn't care. He is seeing a hungry person, he's seeing a homeless person, and he wants to help this individual. He wants to show that generosity. At this point, the Imam, he turns to Mu'alla. He says, Ya Mu'alla, remember that the charity of the night cools down divine anger and it makes the hisab, the accounting on the Day of Judgment, easy. He says, O Mu'alla, know that the charity of the day, it prolongs one's life and it increases one's wealth. And then the Imam, he says, O Mu'alla, know that charity must not be limited to human beings. Look at the generosity of the Ahlul Bayt. Charity must not be limited to human beings. Animals too are deserving of it. Then he continues and he says that when Isa had reached a riverbank once, he took out a loaf of bread from the loaves of bread that he was carrying for himself and he threw it into the river. When Isa threw this loaf of bread into the river, one of the people that was with him, they said to him, why are you wasting the sustenance of Allah? Nabi Isa, he turns to him, he says, oh man, the animals that live in this river, they're surely going to eat from this loaf of bread. And I will surely receive the reward of this from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at the generosity of the Ahlul Bayt, the generosity of the Anbiya, that the generosity is not just to the people that follow them, to the people that love them. No, it extends even to their enemies, and it extends even beyond to the animal world. Look at this generosity which these individuals, they are showing. One of the things that I had to mention tonight is that from the background that we come from, growing up in the West, my brothers and sisters, it is very difficult for us to truly recognize what generosity actually is. And I didn't really realize this until I had left the United States and I had gone to the seminary in Iran and I began to really see how the people in the Middle East lived. It was at that point that I really began to understand what actual generosity means. We live in a culture, unfortunately, it has its good aspects, of course, but we live in a culture that when it comes to the issue of being generous, of taking from what is ours and giving to others, it's a really selfish society. I really hate to say this, but it's the raw truth, that you get this feeling that every man for himself, every individual is only looking out for his own interests. And there is individuals that are extremely generous, but as a society, this is what we are. And when I was in the seminary, I really began to see individuals who literally had nothing, but they were some of the most generous on earth. Individuals that when I would go to their homes, I would literally see they had nothing in their homes, but when it came to preferring others to themselves, they would always prefer others to themselves. One of the recommendations that I just wanted to give, particularly to the youth, those of you who were raised in this country, those of you who have not been back home for extended periods of time, I recommend this, that if you have a chance, go and visit your home countries. If it's not a home country, just go and visit. Find a country, go there, live there. Don't go as an American. Go there and blend in with the people. There is so much to learn, my brothers and sisters. There is a wealth of knowledge that we can gain of our religion that has been embedded into these cultures. I know that many times we tend to look in a very negative way towards these cultures, right? We see the disorganization, we see the poverty, we see the corruption. These things exist, but there is also this other side that there are many elements of Islam that you're going to see practically implemented in these societies. There's really nothing to lose, that if we go to these countries and we spend 4 or 5 or 6 months, there's nothing that we can possibly lose by spending this time there. So this is one of my recommendations, that go to these countries, spend a period of time there, and inshallah try to use that as a means of gaining a deeper knowledge of what it means to be generous, as well as other characteristics that you're going to find there. Now, there's many ways, my brothers and sisters, that we can be generous. A lot of times we think to ourselves that the only way that someone can be generous is the single way that we all have in our minds. That you take your hand and you stick it in your pocket and you pull out your wallet and you give that amount of money to an individual that's an orphan or a poor person or someone that's lost their job. But to be honest, money is actually just one of the things that we can give. And in some ways, money is actually one of the easiest things that we can give. Now, some people might say, no, 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 money is the most difficult thing to give, right? I can give other things, I can't give my money. But the truth of it is that the money is just money. That there's other things that we can also give which perhaps have even more effect. So what are some of these things that we can, inshallah, give? And as a result, we can become a more generous version of ourselves. The first thing that we can give, my brothers and sisters, is very simple. When we greet people, we can greet them with cheerfulness. We can greet them with a smile. One of the habits of the Ahlul Bayt is that they were always in a cheerful state, that whenever they would see their companions, whenever they would see anybody in the streets, they were always seen smiling at them. And it even reaches the point where the companions of Rasulullah, they actually narrated that they said, I never saw anyone smile more than the Holy Prophet. That the Holy Prophet, this was his default state. He was always in a cheerful mood. Now, some people, I don't know what it is, that they're mu'mins, but they're unbelievably grouchy, right? It's like they're trying to smile, but it's going the other way, right? It's going in the contradictory, in the opposite direction. And it's a little bit difficult that, why are these people like this? Because one who understands the nature of Allah, the mercy of Allah, the grace of Allah, the goodness of Allah, you can't help but be a cheerful individual. This is why when we look at the traditions, there is a tradition from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, where he says that whoever smiles at his brother, and by the way, this goes for men and women both, that smile is going to be counted as a good deed for them. Just like you give charity, just like you help people in various ways, smiling at them is going to be something that you're going to see on the Day of Judgment as one of your good deeds. Another type of generosity, my brothers and sisters, is giving our time to other people. One of the most valuable things that we have, in fact, is our time. And in the case of many people, it's more valuable than even the money that we have. One of the things that I've realized in my line of work is that really there's no substitute for spending time with others. You can put millions of YouTube videos up, you can publish dozens of books, but in the end, the one thing which actually affects people the greatest is that one-on-one time that you spend with them. I remember that when I was a student in high school, I went to a pretty wealthy or well-off high school. One of the things that I saw all the time was young kids my age, that their parents would spend all of their time at work, and they would then, rather than spending time with them, because they didn't have any time left after they would get back home, is they would try to buy them things. That instead of spending that time with them, they would compensate by spending money on them. And I remember how miserable these children were. I remember how many issues these children had. That their entire wish in this whole world was that they would give away all of the nice cars that they had, all of the nice clothing that they had, all of the nice shoes that they would have, just for 1 hour of time with their parents. A lot of times we feel that by giving money to people, we are in a way doing our duty towards them. The truth of it is that sometimes money is the easiest thing to give. And that which we should be giving to others is actually from our time and from our energy and from ourselves. One of the signs of actual generosity is this willingness to give from yourself. Inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make us from those who are generous. I wanted to end tonight's session. I know that my time is getting close to the end. I wanted to end it with a very interesting hadith that I came across. The hadith comes from Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, where he says, a sinful but generous youth is more beloved in the eyes of Allah than an old worshipful man who is miserly. Let me say that again. A sinful but generous youth is more beloved in the eyes of Allah than an old worshipful man who is a miser. The Imam is explaining to us something very surprising, that the way that Allah sees it is that a generous youth who may be committing sins, he is more loved by Allah than that old individual who is an abid, he is a worshipper, but he is a miser. Now we might be thinking to ourselves, how? Because if we calculate the way that we calculate, the old man who is an abid, who is doing his ibadat, but he's a miser, he's better than the individual who is young but he's sinful. That's the computation that we have in our minds. How is it that Allah sees that sinful but generous youth as being higher than the worshipper who is a miser? What this hadith is showing us, my brothers and sisters, is showing us that Allah loves this quality of generosity a lot. Allah, He Himself is one of the most generous of the generous. And He loves this quality of generosity in His creation. He sees the sinful youth, but He says that as a result of that generous giving spirit, he has the potential of asking for forgiveness from me. But that old individual who has reached that very old age where he doesn't have a need for this wealth, he is praying, he is fasting, he professes that he believes in me, he believes in the akhirah, but he is not willing to part from his dunya, from his wealth. Perhaps there is an issue with the iman of this individual. Perhaps there is an issue with the belief system of this individual. And so Allah, He looks at this and He prefers this trait of generosity over this trait of miserliness. Here, my brothers and sisters, I wanted to end. I know my time is getting very close to the cutoff time. Inshallah, on this holy month of Ramadan, we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to make us generous in all ways, and that He makes our generosity a means of nearness and closeness to Him, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dua of the 10th day of the month of Ramadan al-Mubarak. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. With the name of Allah, the All-Compassionate, the All-Merciful. Allahumma ja'alni fihi min al-mutawakkilina alayk. O Allah, on this day include me among us those who rely solely upon you. وَاجْعَلْنِي فِيهِ مِنَ الْفَائِزِينَ لَدَيْكَ, and include me among us the successful one. وَاجْعَلْنِي فِيهِ مِنَ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ إِلَيْكَ, and include me among us those who are close to you. بِإِحْسَانِكَ يَا غَايَةَ الطَّالِبِينَ, I ask you by your goodness, O the goal of the seekers. Brothers and sisters, in today's dua, we are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be among those who rely upon only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's very important that we should learn in our daily life, everything we do, we should rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The moment we rely upon each other or anything other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will regret later on, because no one can keep up their promises, and no one can guide us, and no one can give us what we need, because others, they don't know what is our ultimate need is. Therefore, relying upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is a key to success. How to rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Everything we do, we should remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also it's very important that dedication, devotion, and our commitment towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And those who rely upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they will be always winners. And those who rely upon anyone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they are the true losers. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا علي يا عظيم يا غفور يا رحيم أنت الرب العظيم الذي ليس كمثله شيء وهو السميع البصير. وهذا شهر عظمته وكرمته وشرفته وفضلته على الشهور، وهو الشهر الذي فرضت صيامه عليه، وهو شهر رمضان الذي أنزلت فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان، وجعلت فيه ليلة القدر وجعلتها خيرا من 1000 شهر. فيا ذا المن ولا يمن عليك، من علي بفكاك رقبتي من النار، في من تمن علي وأدخلنا الجنة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر، ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله، أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا